What happens when a group of cocky teenagers tries to bully an old man on a bus, only to discover he's a battle-hardened Vietnam veteran with nothing left to lose? This isn't just a story about self-defense. It's about justice, loyalty, and one man's refusal to be silenced. Witness the legend of Walter Briggs and learn why real strength is quiet, disciplined, and unbreakable. The 5:15 bus was packed. Baltimore's evening rush hour painted the windows in golden hues as tired workers slumped into their seats. Among them, an elderly black man boarded quietly. His gait was slow but firm, supported by a smooth wooden cane. He wore a charcoal pea coat, collar neatly folded, and carried a paper bag of groceries. No one really noticed him. Not yet. His name was Walter Briggs, and at first glance, he was just another aging man trying to get home before nightfall. But his posture, straight-backed and commanding, hinted at a past far deeper than the average commuter could guess. As the bus rumbled down Jefferson Avenue, the peace was interrupted by the clang of sneakers on the steps. Two teens swaggered on board, loud, laughing, disruptive. One wore a red hoodie with the sleeves cut off. The other had a buzz cut and a Bluetooth speaker blasting distorted trap music from his coat pocket. The moment they spotted Walter at the back, the boy in the hoodie smirked. "Hey, old man," he barked. "You deaf or just rude?" Walter didn't move. His eyes stayed on the window, but the storm was already brewing. The tension spread like smoke in a closed room. The other passengers looked away, headphones in, faces turned to phones or windows. No one wanted trouble. They had trains to catch, dinner to eat, lives to get back to. But the teens wanted a show. "You just gonna sit there all proud?" the buzz-cut kid sneered, stepping closer. "Maybe he's got one of them fancy retirement checks. Think he got money in that bag?" Walter shifted slightly in his seat, his hand tightening on the cane. "I said something to you, Grandpa," the hoodie boy pressed on. "This your throne or something? You some kind of king now?" The bus jolted at a stop. A woman clutching a stroller glanced up, then quickly looked away. A man in a business suit cleared his throat but didn't speak. Still, Walter didn't respond. He didn't flinch. The lines in his face didn't shift. The boys, confused by his calm, doubled down. "Say something," the hoodie demanded, shoving the cane lightly with his foot. And that's when Walter slowly turned. What the passengers saw in his eyes wasn't fear. It was steel. Walter's gaze met the boys like a brick wall, immovable, silent, old as time. "You boys always so desperate for attention?" he asked, his voice low, his tone calm. "Or is this just your way of pretending you're not scared of the world?" The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They sliced through the noise like a knife through fog. The red hoodie teen hesitated, glancing at his friend. "You got jokes, huh?" he barked. "Think you're funny?" "No," Walter replied. "But I do think you've never met a man who's seen real trouble." And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. The smirks wavered. A chill ran through the silence. The bus lurched forward again. Walter didn't look away. And the teenagers? For the first time, they blinked. "Let me tell you something," Walter said, his voice as steady as his posture. "When I was your age, I wasn't riding buses starting fights with old men. I was crawling through mud in the middle of a jungle, trying not to die." A few passengers turned, genuinely listening now. "Vietnam," he said. "I was 19, same age as you, except instead of loud music and sneakers, I carried an M16 and prayed I'd see sunrise." Buzzcut scoffed, but his laugh was hollow. The red hoodie boy folded his arms. "Man, that's ancient history." Walter nodded. "That's the thing about history. You think it's behind you until it teaches you again." For a second, no one spoke, and the boys didn't laugh. The bus faded from Walter's mind. In its place, thick jungle, mosquito-bitten skin, the deafening chop of Huey rotors, the acid sting of sweat in his eyes. He saw the faces of brothers in arms, boys from Detroit, Houston, and Philly, faces that never made it back. He heard the shouts, the radio static, the explosion that sent him flying into a rice paddy, and the silence afterward, a silence like the one on this bus. When he came back to the present, the red hoodie was still standing in front of him, posturing like a child pretending to be a man. Walter's grip tightened on his cane, not from fear, from memory. "You really think this cane makes me weak?" Walter asked, pushing himself up slowly. His bones creaked, but his spine stayed straight. The kids backed off slightly. "You want to see what strength really looks like?" he said, stepping forward. The red hoodie boy laughed nervously. "Man, chill out. We were just messing with you." "Messing with the wrong man," a bearded man muttered from the front of the bus, finally standing up. He was in his 40s, heavy-set, wearing an old Navy hoodie. "You think bullying elders makes you tough? Grow the hell up." The boys looked around. The crowd was watching now, eyes unblinking, silence absolute. "You done?" Walter asked quietly. The boys, suddenly unsure, didn't answer. The buzz-cut boy muttered a slur under his breath and shoved the bearded man. Big mistake. With a speed no one expected. Doshgad. The man ducked, grabbed the kid's jacket and spun him into a seat. Then Red Hoodie lunged, only to meet Walter's cane across his shin. He screamed, fell. Gasps filled the bus. Someone pulled out a phone and hit record. The thugs scrambled off the floor, cursing and red-faced, but the fight was over. They stormed off at the next stop, shoving the door open. A moment later, the video hit social media, and Walter Briggs, the old man with the cane, became an internet legend. Within 48 hours, Walter's face was everywhere. Memes, murals, t-shirts that read, "Respect the Elder." He didn't understand the hype. He didn't even own a smartphone. All he knew was his landlord called him sir for the first time, and strangers asked for selfies when he walked his dog. But Walter wasn't interested in fame. He was still grieving. His best friend Reuben had died 3 weeks prior, gunned down in a convenience store parking lot. The police called it random. Walter knew better. Reuben's last words still echoed in Walter's memory. "If anything happens to me, check the flash drive in my jacket." That morning, Walter finally did. It held encrypted files, building blueprints, and a contact list of city officials, including one that made his jaw tighten. Mayor Lane. Now he understood. His friend hadn't died by accident. And if the cops weren't going to investigate, Walter would. And this time, the cane wouldn't just be for walking. Walter visited Reuben's old apartment. Inside, drawers were ransacked. But behind a loose panel in the closet, he found something strange. A burner phone, a faded photo of a young woman, and a single word scrawled on the back. Panther. He didn't know what it meant yet, but the war had taught him something important. Trust the clues, not the noise. Walter Briggs wasn't just a viral hero anymore. He was a veteran on a mission, and nothing would stop him from uncovering the truth. Walter didn't need to look long to confirm his instincts. Someone had eyes on him. As he sat by the window sipping bitter coffee, a black SUV idled across the street for the second morning in a row. No plates, tinted windows. He'd seen vehicles like that before, back in places where men disappeared without sound. He left his apartment the long way, through the alley behind Mrs. Delaney's flower shop, doubling back through a convenience store to observe the vehicle. Same spot, same shadow behind the steering wheel, watching. But that wasn't all. That same morning, Walter received a call from Luis Moreno, a former Marine-turned-PI who owed him a favor from years ago. Luis had dug into the woman from the photo, Celeste Monroe. Her last known employment, City Zoning Division. Last seen entering a downtown building tied to Mayor Lane's brother, Thomas. Walter felt the pit in his stomach harden. Reuben hadn't died for nothing. He'd found something explosive. And now Walter had the flash drive. The real one. Not the decoy he'd left in the unlocked drawer for anyone too eager. They were closing in, but they'd underestimated one thing. Walter wasn't just surviving anymore. He was preparing to fight back. Walter tried to keep a low profile, but trouble had a way of sniffing him out. On his way to pick up groceries, he took a shortcut through Linwood Park, a quiet stretch of grass and stone where old vets played chess and kids rode beat-up scooters. That's when he heard them. "Look who it is," a mocking voice echoed. "The bus king himself." Walter turned to find them, red hoodie, buzzcut, and 3 new lackeys, all puffed up like roosters. Their phones were out, already recording. They thought it was funny. They thought he was harmless. "You about to go viral again, Grandpa?" Buzzcut snickered. Walter didn't respond. He just kept walking, cane steady, head high. But they followed. "You deaf or just senile?" Red Hoodie pushed. Walter stopped at the foot of the war memorial, the bronze statue of fallen soldiers gleaming in the sunlight. "You boys want attention?" Then come stand here and tell these names what makes you so tough. They looked around, confused. A few people were watching now, some mothers with strollers, a teenager skating by. You think respect is earned by volume, Walter said, voice even. I learned the opposite in a place where silence saved lives. Red Hoodie laughed, but it lacked bite. Buzzcut took a step back. Red Hoodie was the first to charge. He swung wildly, untrained, all bravado and rage. Walter sidestepped with ease, using the boy's own momentum to send him sprawling into the grass. The onlookers gasped. Buzzcut lunged next, fists flying. Walter blocked the first, ducked the second, and tapped the boy's knee with the butt of his cane. Down he went, groaning, face red with both pain and embarrassment. The other teens froze. Walter didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply stood over them, breathing slow and calm, the cane resting like a scepter of consequence. Each of you has two choices right now, he said, locking eyes with the others. You can leave, or you can learn the hard way. When they left, the park fell quiet again, and an older woman with a shopping cart clapped once, loud, deliberate. Soon others joined in, but Walter wasn't basking in victory. He didn't fight for applause. He fought because someone had to, and because sometimes lessons had to be carved into the present to avoid being repeated in the future. The boys would recover, but they'd remember. That evening, as Walter returned home, the black SUV was gone. But in its place, something worse, a plain envelope tucked beneath his door. Inside, a typed note. Back off, no second warning. No fingerprints, no signature, no trail. He burned it in the sink, the flame curling the edges like old war maps he had once studied by candlelight in the jungles of Da Nang. Later, as he sorted through Reuben's army footlocker, he found a torn envelope containing a faded blueprint and another name scribbled in ink. Panther. It wasn't a nickname. It was a code name, and it chilled Walter more than the note had. Louise confirmed it that night. Panther was Thomas Lane, brother of the mayor, connected to black market property grabs, zoning manipulation, and city-funded contracts. Reuben had stumbled too close, and now Walter was holding the fuse. Only question was, when would it blow? Louise brought grim news. Celeste Monroe hadn't just gone missing. Her entire work record, after 2021, had been wiped from public databases. Emails deleted, ID badge deactivated, cameras at her last known location, files corrupted. Only someone inside city infrastructure could pull that off, which meant Panther wasn't working alone. Walter stayed up late, combing through Reuben's recovered documents, property transfers, shell companies, laundered funds through a massage parlor on 9th Street. One name kept surfacing in small print, Sebastian Vance, a ghost. Luis offered a word of caution. Briggs, this isn't just criminal. This is citywide corruption with a body count. Walter exhaled slowly, the old pain in his leg flaring. I've seen worse. And he meant it. He'd survived napalm. He could handle bureaucrats with guns. The next morning, Walter was sweeping glass from the walkway when Amber, the woman from across the hall, approached. I heard something last night, she said softly. You okay? Walter nodded. She looked around. You always this calm? Not always, he replied. War teaches you things. Calm isn't natural. It's earned. She smiled faintly. You remind me of my father. He served too. Didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. They talked longer than Walter expected. About war, loss, her troubled relationship, and the sound of silence that screams louder than arguments. Before she left, she touched his arm gently. If you ever need backup, I might not have a cane, but I've got fire. Walter watched her go, a flicker of something stirring deep in his chest. Hope. Walter's instincts screamed the moment he turned down the alley behind Benson's cafe. Two men stepped out of the shadows, both armed, not with guns, but with intent. You've been asking the wrong questions, old man, one said, grabbing Walter's shoulder. The other raised a hand. This ain't personal. Just walk away. Walter responded with a pivot, slamming his cane into the first man's knee. The crack echoed like a bat hitting concrete. The second attacker lunged, but Walter ducked low, sweeping the man's feet from under him. Both were down before a full minute to storm. Walter stood over them, not gloating but warning. I've been hit harder by bamboo sticks wrapped in fire. He took a photo of their faces and left them groaning. Then he called Luis. "They're not bluffing anymore." "No," Luis said, "but neither are we." Walter sat across from Luis in a dimly lit diner that smelled of burnt toast and bad coffee. A folder lay open between them, full of grainy photos, names, timelines, and at the center, one name circled in red: Thomas Panther Lane. "He was special ops," Luis said, tapping one of the photos. "Disappeared from military records in '91, reappeared under Homeland Security, then started running private deals in city development. He's not just the mayor's brother, he's the mayor's fixer." Walter stared at a still from a security camera. It showed Panther standing outside the same massage parlor where Celeste was last seen, a timestamp dated just 3 days before her disappearance. "They took her," Walter said flatly. "More than her," Luis nodded. "3 whistleblowers, all tied to zoning complaints. 1 dead, 2 missing. This goes deep." Walter clenched his fist. He'd fought to defend his country. Now he had to defend it from the inside. And this time there would be no uniform. Just a cane, a name, and the truth. Walter needed a plan. He returned to Ruben's place, which had become his makeshift command center. Using an old laptop, he created a false lead, an email to a fake journalist about an upcoming data leak. Then he let that leak quietly fall into City Hall's inbox. Within 12 hours, someone took the bait. Late that night, Walter heard the lock click. 3 men burst into the apartment, armed and masked. But Walter wasn't there to sleep. From a hidden panel in the kitchen, he launched a non-lethal stun trap. Flashbang, gas, the works. Within moments, the men were down, coughing and blind. He stepped into view with a GoPro strapped to his chest. "You boys really thought I'd be that easy?" He handed the footage off to Luis. By sunrise, it was online. City Hall couldn't spin it. The footage was clear. Hired muscle, military gear. The internet exploded. Briggs, the system. Ishach, Panther unmasked. Justice for Ruben. But Walter wasn't finished, because Panther had yet to answer. The next day, Walter boarded a one-way train to Atlanta, the last confirmed location of Sebastian Vance, Panther's right-hand man, and the man who likely pulled the trigger on Ruben. He sat quietly by the window, watching the countryside pass like ghosts of the past. In his coat pocket were 3 things: the original flash drive Ruben died to protect, a letter addressed to Amber in case he didn't make it back, and his father's army tags, worn smooth from decades of silent memory. A conductor passed by, nodding with recognition. "You're that guy from the news, ain't you?" Walter gave a soft smile. "Not anymore." As the train rolled forward into darkness, Walter leaned back. He had no backup, no badge, just an old man's pain and a promise to his best friend. But Walter Briggs had one more mission to complete, and this time, he wasn't walking away. Don't mistake silence for weakness or age for irrelevance. Everyone carries a history, and some carry legacies forged in blood, sacrifice, and duty. True strength isn't in fists, but in the wisdom to know when to fight and when to forgive.